Okay, you guys ready to get started? Can you hear? What? Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to our third Downtown Community Task Force meeting. All right, so our agenda for this evening, welcome and introductions. A quick overview of the processes that took place in 2015 and 2017 around the downtown. Then we're going to let the task force have a discussion on the 2017 downtown vision. We'll go over future meetings and next steps, and then finally at the end of the meeting, there'll be some time for public comment. So with that, do we want to just quickly go around the table with introductions? If you want to, who wants to start? We'll start.
Rob Mayer, architect, former planning commissioner.
Oh, make sure your microphones are on. Push the green button. Yeah.
Rob Mayer, architect, former planning commissioner.
Adam Thompson, President of the Old Quad Residents Association.
Anna Vargas Smith, Historical and Landmarks Commissioner.
Butch Coyne, Santa Clara University, SCU presents.
Leslie Xavier, Principal Planner with the city.
Steve Lee, Assistant Planner with the city.
Andrew Crabtree, Director of Community Development for the city.
Deborah Von Hewen, Cultural Commission.
Dan Ondersek, Reclaiming Our Downtown.
All right, thank you. So for those in the audience that just walked in, on the table over here, there are some handouts that'll help you follow along the conversation tonight. And the task force has the handouts in front of them. So the first item is in 2015 and 2017, there were two processes that took place around planning for the downtown and coming up with a vision. There is one handout. The front has a summary of the 2017 visioning process, and the back has a table that compares what happened in 2015 to what happened in 2017. So we sent this to the task force ahead of this meeting and had them to go over it and respond to what their top 5 vision elements were. And I'll just quickly go over the categories that were very similar for both years. Was parking, finding places for shared parking, free parking or co-located parking, transportation and circulation. Some of the same things were tying transit together, tying the downtown with the Caltrain station. Design, finding an appropriate scale for the downtown, attractive features, historic style, varying architectural expression. For commercial, providing a diverse tenant base. And then open spaces, both processes wanted to have outdoor space for gathering for families and green spaces. So you can look over that. But I'm not going to go in detail through the whole list. Sorry, it's up there. What do we have next? So 2015 wasn't as a complete of process as 2017. 2017, at the end of their process, they actually came up with a vision. And there were, 13 elements that they came up that they wanted to see in downtown. Different kind of housings, connection to BART and Caltrain, relocating City Hall, providing underground parking and parking structures, providing different architectural styles, connecting to the library, Franklin Street reintroduced as a main street, making downtown a local destination, making Franklin Street pedestrian-oriented, reestablishing the street grid, encouraging a mix of uses, introducing a theater as an iconic building, and establishing a central public space. So we took these items to our Art and Wine Festival that happened in September, and we did some community outreach there. We did a dot exercise. We put all of these vision items on a board and had people just rank their top items. We gave them each 3 dots. And what we see up here, and I'll read them over for you all, is the results of the dots that we collected on the board So from the Art and Wine Festival, the top 5 items that the community wanted to see was to provide a sense of local destination for downtown, incorporate a shuttle system to connect downtown to BART and Caltrain station, establishing a central public space for entertainment and events, make Franklin Street a pedestrian-focused main street, and provide underground parking or parking structures. So those were the top 5 from the Art and Wine Festival. And then finally, sort of the meat of our conversation today is we have the rankings from the task force members. So their top 5 items were to encourage a mix of uses in downtown, reestablish the street grid, incorporate a shuttle system from downtown to BART and Caltrain station, encourage different housing types, and provide a sense of a local destination for downtown. So some of them were similar. I think there was two different ones. But so tonight, we just wanted to talk about all of these vision items and sort of get to, for the task force, is the vision still the same? And are there any elements that would need to be added? And we're going to take the conversation that you all have here tonight and summarize that to provide to our consultant for the downtown precise plan process. So with that, is there anybody that wants to start about your top 5 priorities?
I just
Rob.
wanted to touch a little bit on the local destination. I think that's for certain, but I think if it's something special, which we all want it to be, and it will be, then word will get out, and it will be regional and beyond. I don't want to mention the one on Winchester and Stevens Creek as a comparison. Santana will mention that, but it is beyond a local destination. It's become a regional destination and an international destination. If people are coming to the area, it's attracting them. So we are competing with other destinations. We need to realize that because the retail is a huge part of that and keeping that sustainable. So we just have to, I just wanted to make that comment.
I'd like to add to that. We keep talking about the local destination, which is an absolute. It must be community-centric. We understand that. But it also has to be a regional destination. You know, we're in an area of extreme historic and cultural value to this area. Just walk up Franklin Street, start at El Camino. You hit the 3rd Santa Clara Mission. A few steps later, you've hit the Morris Seed Company, the original seed company that supplied seeds throughout the world. Continue another half a block, you're in the German neighborhood and the original German culture that was here. 2 more steps, you're in the Portuguese neighborhood. And on as you walk down the steps of the Paseo. It's important that as we're putting this local destination together that we remember that we have that element. And yes, we're not trying to become a tourist center like a historic San Diego, but we should also capitalize on this, which will draw people into our community. Because as we all know, retail is hard to sustain. And if you have more people coming into that retail center, you have the university with our 12,000, 13,000 people, you have the community coming into it, but also subsidizing that with individuals who are coming into our region to see the history of it. We need to make sure that's a part of it.
I'd like to add something as well. Although it kind of dropped off the list, establish a central public space that can be used for music and events. I would submit that having a local destination would include those features and also some kind of public art space.
And if I could add to Deborah's point, and I agree with both Butch and Rob on both regional and area destinations and having retail as a center of that, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I think that you know, that public place that we're talking about is what our forefathers designed when they put in Park Place. Main Street flowed right into that with a gazebo, and I mean, it's a lovely area that, and again, that's our you know, our group's number one focus is that grid, is bringing that Main Street back so it flows right into that park. One thing I want to say on retail that, you know, we can probably touch on here in a minute is we've been looking at cities from, you know, all over the country, but we're seeing, and I put it in my notes to you, Leslie, a case study that we're investigating right now with Los Gatos, and comparing that to Campbell, that's 4.5 miles away. My wife gave me a tip. She goes, there's about 8 businesses that have gone out of business, and they're, you know, they're restaurants. And so I snuck down there, and I don't know, it was like 6 a.m., and started taking pictures of the for lease signs. And it wasn't 8, it was 33. So there's out of, and I'm guessing probably 90 to 120 businesses in Los Gatos, 33 are vacant right now. So I think we as a, and it's not for us, I think this is a question to the urban planner and to the retail expert for there, is why is it that Los Gatos is, you know, in trouble? I'm not going to say dying, but they're, you know, they're in trouble when Campbell is just completely booming breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So, and I think it plays to both what Butch and Rob were saying, that retail has to thrive. So, thank you.
Yeah, one of the things that wasn't on the list I mentioned is flexibility. You know, downtowns were built around flexibility and small businesses coming and entrepreneurial activity. And I think if we took some of those aspects of what the downtown used to be would help make it thrive. I mean, I think Los Gatos, and I'd read about 2 years ago, they started having trouble because the spaces are very rigid. I mean, they're older buildings. They are very set in stone. They're individually owned, very similar to Franklin Mall. And that's one of the reasons why Franklin Mall has not done well, most likely, is because all of them are going in their own direction, and none of them are trying to, you know, make something out of it. And we've had density issues. I mean, we need massing of people. We haven't really looked to the university and the surrounding areas to draw people in. So I really like to see if we can start really put emphasis on trying to make whatever plan we have or we come up with to allow some flexibility in the plan as the retail landscape and housing landscape drastically change as the years move on.
I also wanted to echo something that's near and dear to my heart is what Butch was saying about the cultural diversity in the area. I think I saw that, or we all did, pretty clearly in the parade yesterday. You know, everyone that was there was so multicultural. And if you look at the stats on that, there's like 42% of the people who live here are from somewhere else in the world. You know, so I think that when you're building a downtown, it needs to, not just the dining and the shops, they need to reflect that multiculturalness about Santa Clara that's existed a very long time, but it's evolved into a different kind of diversity. I know the schools, for instance, there's like 59 different dialects spoken in the school alone. So it just shows you what a melting pot that we are. So I just want to echo what Butch was saying. History of our city is critically important to attract regionally and internationally. We are the center of Silicon Valley geographically, so we might as well embrace that role.
Can I add one more thing? So on the historical side of things, you know, one of the, you know, again, the visions is the recreation of a couple of the buildings, you know, and I think we talked about this last time, maybe the facade of City Hall that, you know, our group we're advocating for, but, you know, we're open, the theater and so forth, where it's not, the downtown isn't recreated, but one or two of the buildings are. So you have the post office and the historical feeling there, beyond what you're saying as far as the history beyond that. But that I think we have the craftsmen now that we didn't have 20 years ago to pull that off, so.
So, I mean, based on your guys' outreach to Art and Wine, the community, I know, you know, we've gotten other polls, and then also the task force, it looks like most of everybody's ideas pretty much align. I mean, even if you added 1.5 more, it's all pretty much there. So now how do we, at 100,000 feet, it's great, these are visions and these are what's going to guide us, but how are we going to break these up and actually implement them into design and practical pieces and components that we can analyze from a financial perspective and get developers to buy into as well, so we can actually get this thing built.
So that's really what the consultant is going to help us with. So these would be sort of the bigger vision statements of what we want to accomplish, and now we have to figure out how we're going to accomplish them. Some of them are going to be in how you design the circulation. Some of them are going to be the density of land uses that you allow in the downtown and how much density you need to achieve some of these things. So that really is what we'll be seeing coming forward in this process as the consultant comes on board.
And did you guys, I know we had talked last time about taking the plan from 2017 and having a financial analysis done on that plan, since many of the similar themes were, is that something that you guys are doing?
That's something that we're going to ask the consultant to
do?
do. Yeah.
As
yeah.
like a preliminary, so that way we
Right.
have that as like a base, so we
Right.
can kind of adjust as
Compare,
needed?
yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Leslie, I also want to touch on this whole idea of connectivity and making it mutually beneficial. We're talking about this 6-block or 8-block area, and I think that's very short-sighted on all of our parts. You know, that's the area we're going to build into, but we've got to make sure we include the surrounding areas and promote the surrounding areas. We have beautiful Victorian homes in the Old Quad neighborhood. We have the post office, which is a great location for that. We have a university with a mission. So as we're thinking about this whole planning process, it shouldn't be about Lafayette, Monroe, Benton, Homestead. It should be that radius around us that takes us all the way to the train station, that takes us all the way to the Alameda, that takes us all the way out to El Camino. We have so much to offer. I just want to make sure that we're not limiting ourselves.
And if I can dovetail on that, I had that in my notes and I didn't say it, but what we used to do, and what's great about the 8 blocks, is we're not doing parcel by parcel, you know, property by property development anymore. But you can fall into the same trap with an 8 block that doesn't communicate with the quad, you know, where cars are speeding through downtown and into their neighborhood. So we don't, you know, we want to be conscious of that and respectful of the, you know, the life that they live in the quad. But to your point, you know, how does downtown interface with the train station? And I think other areas as well that are revenue sources beyond the train station. So I think every area has to talk to every other area, and it has to be, I think somebody said, synergistic, you know, and not imposing.
Not just synergistic, but they have to interrelate.
Right.
You've got to be in a position where if you're having dinner in the new downtown, the revised downtown, you'll feel very comfortable walking over to Schott Stadium to watch a baseball game or a soccer game, or taking a tour of the old houses in the neighborhood or whatever. And both in 15 going through that process and 17 going through that process, it was very much about this core block area and ignoring the rest of our city. So this becomes the other part of it. The other piece of it that I want to touch on, because it was actually a strong component in both 15 and 17, is really looking at the entire city. And at that time, one of the conflicts that we were wrestling with at the time was this idea of old Santa Clara and the high-tech Santa Clara coming into town, and how do the two meld together and become partners. And I thought we had a couple of very good discussions on that, talking about basically above 101, where Levi Stadium is, a new development up there. That's the new Santa Clara. That's the high-tech, that's the flashy, that's the uptown. Thank you, Rob. That's the entertainment component of it. South of 101 is really that historic district, that downtown. This is where our heart and soul really is. This is where our roots go deep. And that we need to make sure that it's not just a Disneyland type of downtown where let's just run in and see what it is. You know, let's walk through the university. Let's go see the mission. Let's, as I said, let's look at the old houses. Let's connect everything together. And there was some real strong discussion on that. And I want to make sure, because again, I'm not quite sure who was a part of both the 15 and the 17 discussions, that those parts of the vision actually come to the table. so that we make sure that we're moving forward on those.
I wanted to add on to that, so one of the big things, I traveled a lot this summer, went to Boise. So what do you do when you get to a new town? Of course, we have all our digital stuff and top 10 things to do in Boise. We're going to benefit from all of that once we have that. And that's honestly what I did. Every town I went to, what is the top 10 things? Bingo, and how do I get there? They have a river walk, which is near the university. The university is divided from the downtown by the river. There's a bridge over the river. There's a zoo in the park. So I think the one thing that I've been thinking a lot about is that we can look at the past in terms of, we're gonna bring some of the past in, but we can't lose sight of the next 25 to 50 years with our vision of the city. We can compare this. What I want to make sure is that when we're doing comparisons of other cities, I'm going to bring up the example of City Hall and locating it downtown. I go to City Hall a fairly frequent amount of time because I'm an architect and I do business in the building and planning department. But honestly, my wife says, I never go down to City Hall. So it's an important thing to realize that things are changing and that in this digital world, they're changing fast. And we can't lose sight of the future. We're the tech center. We need to be smart about how we're planning this. Okay. I don't want to lose the soul. That you all know that. I talk about soul and in everything to Adam's like, okay, enough. But he gets it. So anyway, that's what I want to say.
So Rob, you're basically talking about, which I think we all have, we have to leave a legacy. This isn't for us. This is for our kids, for our grandkids. What are they going to need? What are they going to use in the future? So tying the two together. Okay.
Don't design for the now. We are designing for the future.
Okay, so just based on that conversation, I want to add one thing. So while there is an 8-block area defined for the plan, we're definitely going to look at how that plan connects, like you say, to the surrounding area. I mean, some of that stuff is floated to the top. How do you connect to the Mission Library? How do you connect to Caltrain, Future BART, the university? Some of that will be wayfinding. We do have wayfinding written in as one of the topics for our consultant to look at. But yeah, the 8-block area really is, those are the land uses that we're going to plan for. That's where we're going to have our land use plan. That's where the design guidelines are going to be applied to. But I don't know if it'll be in the circulation chapter or anything at this point, but typically a circulation chapter will look at how does this area connect to other areas of the city.
It's 10, isn't it? Wasn't it extended to Madison?
Yes, correct. You're right. It is 10. I think we're so used to saying 8-block area. You're right. It is a 10-block area, but yes. So that'll just be what the defined land uses are, where people will go if you want to develop in that area, but it does have a relationship outside of just those blocks.
I'll add one more thing. I must have my Wheaties today or something. I don't know what it is. I think the other component that we need to make sure we talk about, and again, it carried through both discussions, this part of Santa Clara is really becoming the cultural center also. Not necessarily an entertainment center, although there can be entertainment. I'm not saying don't have coffee shops or comedy clubs. But part of this initial conversation started about the culture. And the university, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring it up, the university has been spending a lot of time and energy to start the motion on this cultural center. We have the De Sausset Museum. We now have the Art and Art History Building with an exhibit hall. We have the Mayer Theater, the Fess Parker, the Mission Church. We're looking at possibly a new facility. And part of this conversation that we've had with the city is the university is investing in this cultural component that's going to be here for a long time. If you remember, the university started before the city, and knowing the Jesuits will be here long after the city's gone. But with that said, as we start looking at the downtown also, how can we connect the two? How do we create, again, that synergy that walks people across Lafayette Street, that walks them down the Arts Paseo, which is now running through the university? In fact, just today, we just on the Arts Paseo installed a brand new Fletcher Benton piece of artwork along there. So we're really working hard to bring that cultural component to the city of Santa Clara, and we're really hoping that we can partner with the city as we develop this to keep that cultural program going throughout the entire city.
And just to clarify, Butch, so the entities you were talking about, they're open door right now, you can just
They're-
walk in? and-
They're open door there.
okay.
So that's why we're looking, we've talked with Dan about movie theaters, we've talked about other exhibits, small artist lofts, different things like that too. Again, it creates a uniqueness in the downtown that isn't found really anywhere else in the city.
Okay, so from your top five, the things that floated to the top for both the Art and Wine Festival responses and from the task force and sort of mirror, all the same things that were in the 2017 process. Does anybody want to talk a little bit more about the mix of uses for downtown? Any thoughts on that? Mix of uses?
Like, we talk about housing first. I think it's important to have a mixture of housing types. Efficiency units, work, live, the whole gamut, because, with Gateway Crossings across the way, that was all apartments, 1,600 apartments. There's less of a sense of permanence there, unless, of course, you rent control. I have friends in rent control in San Francisco. They've been there 30 years in one apartment. But I think that's an important thing. Mixture, flex space, Adam hit on it. It's what we talked a lot about with Gateway, is that if retail isn't viable at a certain period in time, especially, let's say, it's getting going, if you creatively design a connection with the floor above, then maybe it becomes work, live connected to a residential unit above. So it's designed in to go either way. The failure would be if you designed it only one way, and it's too costly.
Well, right, I think a lot of the traditional storefronts did have a living space above them that was for the owner of the business. So that's something that we don't really talk about anymore, but it's important that people be able to live where they work or where they run their business.
Yeah, really, it's funny, this is like this missing link I keep thinking about as an architect. It's hard for boutique shops to survive, but if they owned the house and the shop below, would that solve the problem? Maybe it would, I don't know, but it's a problem, right? How do we get boutique? Do we want all chains? No, I mean, in a perfect world, we'd have a nice mixture, right?
But the problem, you need the rent.
Yeah, that they would have control over both, right? I mean, that's the way it used to be in San Francisco and all the ancillary neighborhoods not in downtown. There was living above, right? There was a staircase that either went up, and then they eventually converted that to rental, and then it's boutique below, but they're not cohabitated. But having it flex with a stair, just, to go either way, I think is critical. But yeah, if we could solve the problem of, affordable housing and boutique retail, I think, wow, we would really be the center of what's possible.
But, and I think to Adam's point, so and again, we're still kind of digesting the data, but we're talking to a lot of retailers in Los Gatos, and the one-story phenomenon that Adam referred to is correct, that, you're a landlord, we're capitalists, demand goes up, you raise the rent. And for the guy, I'm going to say Opa, that guy worked his tail off for, 5, 6 years, and then at the end of that lease, the rent went up. Whereas if you have, mixed use above, I don't know, you don't want to say the S word, subsidize, but, is that something we explore or talk about? Is it done effectively in other cities? We haven't, our group, our research, we haven't investigated that. But I want to say, just to finish, that is one of the reasons, what I went in expecting was that was the reason. Now, they keep jacking our rent up, but that's not the reason, that I'm hearing out of a majority of these people who've gone out. So that's why I want to, it's not something to tackle in 2 hours. It's a lengthy, investigation on why that's occurring, but we're lucky it's in our backyard, and we don't have to go to, South Carolina to figure it out or whatever, so.
I think another reason why Campbell does better is because there's more businesses around Campbell, right? You have the Prune Yard Towers, so they actually have a better, 9 to 5 and in nightlife, right? So I think you were the one who kind of coined 18-hour downtown, I think is what you're. Oh, 14, not 18. But, but I think it is really important, and that's where mixed use, we can't just look at one component of, housing and retail. It's housing, retail, and office space. I mean, and having something, and the university, having all of that blended together will help support that retail. And, retail as we know it, the El Camino retail, that's long dead and gone. Nobody wants to drive from stall to stall, shop to shop, right? Get out of their car, pick up one thing, drive, half a block, get another thing. What people want is people want to go places where it's masked, right? Where they can be seen and they can see others. And that is the key in the new retail that I think is being successful. The places that can mass it together and support it by having foot traffic for 14 hours.
Yeah. The connectivity. It's all about connectivity.
And I had a conversation with a young lady here in the audience today, as far as that plays to transit, where you have that transit stops right in the middle of what Adam's talking about, and you get out and spur. You go here, you go here, you go here, then you get back on that and go to the next, and it could be 2-3 miles away, it could be 10 miles away. And that's, where El Camino might come in, and where this idea expands far beyond those 8 blocks.
Also wanted to add, I think, I'm the eternal optimist here, but I really think we're poised for greatness with this downtown. We're so strategically located by the train station. We're in Silicon Valley. I mean, there's not a lot of negatives about this project that we're looking at right now. We need to really look at it and embrace it and say it's bound to succeed this time if we open the streets, if we open Franklin, Washington. We have a gateway to the train station. If we have transportation, we are building for the future. My cousins, who are all millennials at this point, most of them anyways, they don't want to drive. They want to walk. Some of them don't. You are so
They can't afford it.
yeah, there's a lot of reasons why they want to kind of live, work, and play. And I can see our downtown being a total destination for that. But another interesting thing that has come up is seniors. Seniors are very similar to millennials. They don't want to drive. They want to walk out their door and get a newspaper and have a cup of coffee. So there's a broad demographic that's going to work in our downtown. So I just want to say we're pretty much poised for greatness. We're also a college town. Win-win, right?
I mean, how many college towns? I mean, you can compare Stanford but university is very busy, but they're not connected.
It's not like Ann Arbor.
I don't want to say it is a no-brainer. I mean, really, we just can't mess it up.
We just got to build it.
So, and the experts, right? The beauty is we're going to have an urban planner, and we've had some experience with past ones, and it's super exciting. It's just, it has to have that soul. I mean, it's very easy not to have the soul because that's what's being built.
That's Santana Row.
Almost all, Santana Row has no soul.
Sunnyvale.
It's slowly getting its soul with the office buildings. That's creating a real across-the-board city center. But the soul is such a unique thing. And some people, it sounds like some hippie comment, but it's actually, it has to do with the building forms, the space, the heights and the facades, and nothing cheesy. And I mean, it's what our old downtown was, but we're talking a little bigger.
Right. So. But I want to say, there's one talking point, and this is to Butch, is that, and I'm not signing you up, it's not a slam dunk, but for Santa Clara University to allow, or consider allowing a trolley to go through to the train station.
We actually had drawings and actually photos of trolleys that could go up and down Franklin Street from that. They're autonomous vehicles that could have a historic feel or a future look to it, whichever direction we want to go with it.
But I mean, speaking on behalf of our group, we really appreciate
Right.
that.
So there's,
Because instead of going around, you go through that beautiful campus and, you know,
that's
it's
why we're
awesome.
trying to finish the Paseo so that it becomes a walkable you know, there's some issues the university will have to deal with. Security is going to be an issue because all of a sudden we're taking the public through the campus. So but that's further down the road. And again, the university, as we mentioned, the university is a big part of this. But there's a large faction on the university that does not want this to become a college town. This isn't going to be Bronco City, but it's a place where our students can go, where our faculty and staff can go and feel a part of the downtown. That's one of the things we hear from faculty, staff, and students is they don't feel connected to Santa Clara. You know, we've heard it a dozen times before. We're the little Vatican. We're this walled-off city in the middle of Santa Clara. The new administration, we don't want that. We want to figure out a way that we can bring our students in and become citizens of this town. So we need to work on doing that. The other piece of this, and I've said this before, is, which most people don't realize, the Mayer Theater is right on the corner of Franklin and Lafayette. You all know where it is. The music recital hall is right there. Last year in that building, we did 378 events, and we brought through that building 78,000 people. Our number one complaint, nowhere to go in Santa Clara for dinner, for after drinks. We talk about Fiorello's, we talk about Mia Vicino's, we talk about those types of things. But talk about helping support that retail. 78,000 times divided by 365, that's a few people coming into town every day.
The other thing that's unfortunate is that there's no kiosk for the theater. I know the theater rear end faces Lafayette. Maybe we'll fix that over time. But the fact that, I mean, sure, we have digital stuff, but there's nothing like a sign as people are passing by and saying,
Your mouth to God's ears.
okay.
If you look on campus, there's not a single kiosk on campus.
So maybe that needs to change.
We're working on that. If you now walk down the Arts Paseo, you now see banners along there saying that there's things happening along there. Remember, the Jesuits, they don't work in years, months, decades. They work in millennials, you know.
One thing I wanted to add about, and I think it's, Adam touched on it, about having business people in the downtown. I just know from my experience, as I'm now in my 5th decade, when I was in college, I didn't spend a lot of money. I was studying. I mean, I spent some money, and I worked, but the bulk of my income that was spent on stuff was in my 20s when I lived in San Francisco and I was working, okay? So there's a huge, I think that's a huge thing. I'm not saying other people don't spend money, but I bet if you did a study, people in their 20s that are just working and in that, before they start family, they still spend money in family, but you're a little bit more, you're thinking about college and weddings and everything beyond. So I spent all my disposable income when I lived in San Francisco on.
You got to see my son's U of A bill.
Okay, well, times have changed, yeah.
It goes from disposable income to responsible income, right?
Yes,
I mean,
yes, exactly.
I'm just entering the responsible
That's
income.
okay.
I mean, the other thing I wanted to mention too, Adam, about your housing, there was some discussion about the micro-housing and a way to use those as flex spaces, that you could use them as a 200 or 500 square foot pop-up retail type of space and convert them to micro apartments so that you could accommodate some of that affordable living. You could afford those small retail shops that can't afford it. If they open, close, it's not a big impact. So it's something to actually look at, you know. I know New York's doing quite a bit with micro apartments now and things like that. The other piece about mixed use is, and I hope it goes without saying, is make sure we're active around all the blocks. It's not just Franklin Street, but as you walk down Homestead, as you walk down Washington or whatever street you're going up, that it's 4 ways. It's all the way around the entire block that things are happening, so that it does become vibrant and it's just not which to a certain extent, that's what Campbell is. You walk down Campbell Avenue in the middle, everything's there. You go to the outskirts, it's almost like a movie set. Behind it's all fake. We want to make sure that as you walk through the entire downtown in that area, that it encourages you to go out, Homestead, Benton, other places like that, instead of holding you in.
Yeah, that would allow future opportunity. I mean, growing, expanding as there's more need for that central place, right? As El Camino starts to shrivel with more housing and there's less and less places to go there, so.
We noticed it in Sunnyvale, Adam and I, that there's Murphy's, but then there's some parking garages and things. There was not a lot of energy outside of Murphy's. It was just, yeah, just sort of dead zone pockets, right?
Okay, is there anything anybody wants to say about any of the other 5 elements that floated to the top? Oh, here, that's art and wine. Let me go back to yours.
Oh, I did have, may I? My guy will kill me. So one, and I think this is for the group, that because of the relatively small area, that rooftop parks should also be considered for gathering spots as well. You know, we've seen a couple examples that really are mind-blowing of that. So I think that, am I missing anything else?
Do you mean rooftop public parks? Publicly accessible
I
spaces?
think that's what they mean. But again, there's rooftop, non-public parts too. Should be pretty fun.
Yeah, community garden. I mean, the community garden that's by the university is overfilled and people are dying for more places for a community garden, so that could be something.
It's tricky. I mean, you got mechanical units a lot of times on top of buildings, but it can obviously be planned in.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, there's some issues with what constitutes a park. I've already been down that road of rooftop parks.
Okay, so one thing that was one of the key ideas from 2015 and 2017 was around parking. That did not float to the top for any of the priorities at the Art and Wine Festival or for the task force. Did it? Oh, okay, you're right. So Art and Wine Festival, sorry, I'm incorrect. It did come in at number 5, parking for downtown, but it did not make the task force list. Is there anything that anybody wants to talk about parking?
Parking's tricky. It's expensive, for one. It's ugly, for 2. And it's a nuisance, for 3, because you're bringing people in by cars. And so I think with the way people are commuting using, Uber and Lyft, scooters, hopefully those will get approved soon through council. I know they've kind of tabled that a little bit again. Electric bikes, the train station, right, and future BART is going to be huge. We need to really plan on how we want to guide people in and out of downtown. I mean, Nancy Biagini, who's sitting in the audience here, said, how do you get to Santa Clara's downtown? I mean, explain it in an old MapQuest, but direction by direction. It's difficult. It's not easy. So then what we do is we go onto Waze, and you got Cookie Monster telling you to cut through everyone's backyard to get there, and I don't think any of the residents want that. So, I mean, parking is going to be obviously something we need, because we need parking in the beginning. But I think building flexible parking, I was reading, there's areas that are doing basically temporary, almost like erector set parking structures that are being built on lots. They get their parking in early, and then they take them down, and then they can build on it. It's still usable. They're not putting up a full post-tension concrete structure.
So when demand subsides.
When demand starts to
over years,
subside
which it
over
will.
years, they
Yeah.
can take that down, and now that lot can be built into something else for a future
So I just read
future
that.
project. And it's pretty cool. I mean, I think those are the kind of creative solutions we need to really look at and build that flexibility in.
Yeah, some cities actually are building parking garages that can be converted to housing. So you build the basic structure and you do a conversion on that. I mean, I know we talked about early on the cost of going underground. That's huge cost. That's a huge cost. And there was some conversations about trying to put some parking on the periphery. I know one of the discussions was the Wells Fargo Bank doing parking on top and retail on the bottom. But also look at things, again, with the university, we have a parking garage. Let's not forget, how do we partner with that and use some of the spaces that we have so that it's not necessarily parking in the heart of downtown, but within close proximity.
I think the natural place to put a parking garage is obviously for both purposes. People, we don't want people in their cars, but that's on the fringe, but it's in a good strategic location. And if we have a shuttle that works us around, I think, we solve a lot, so.
I think there's other opportunities with, developments like the Benton project. I mean, going through and talking with them during that process, they were saying they're still overparked even with what they built. And one of the conversations that kind of came up was, well, if you're so underparked, would you potentially work some kind of an agreement later on as, with the city to allow downtown parking there, which is on the side of the tracks? And they didn't, throw total cold water. I'm sure we have to go figure it out. But looking at other developments who have already paid that capital cost and figuring out if there's a way that, the city or the businesses pay into a co-op that actually rent some of those spaces back. So we're not building it, we're actually utilizing dead space that's already been built and can't be converted.
Think Disneyland trolleys.
Anybody else on parking? You're gonna hold? Oh, yeah.
And that's, you bring that up, and that's a worrying wage. But what the idea there is, the closer you get to the desired areas, the higher the cost. And I think to Adam and Rob's point, you can have a parking area that is convenient to trolley, that is far enough away that it doesn't impact what we're talking about historically, aesthetically, et cetera. But you're still going to need parking close by. For now, I think as the millennials grow, and our age, I think the demand for cars are going to drop. So, and again, that's when you can, you build buildings. It's my mic was off. Sorry, guys.
Oh.
Can't tell.
All right, is there any other topics that anybody wants to bring up regarding the vision elements from 2017? Any other discussion? I can go. So the next slide I had was, is the vision still the same, and is there anything that should be added? There's definitely a lot of the same elements that occurred both in 2015 and 2017 that floated to the top just at the Art Wine Festival and with the task force analysis of those items.
Leslie, part of the reason I brought the discussion up to look at these past plans is we haven't seen a change. So I wanted to make sure that we didn't go down that path of saying, let's bring in a whole new set of consultants. Let's spend the next 3 years going through the same process again. I think generally speaking, the direction is fairly clear. You're not hearing a lot of individuals stepping up saying, we need to go in this direction or that direction. It seems like everybody is, barring detail, heading in the same direction. So the hope is, since we've been through this process multiple times, I haven't been here that long, but 4 or 5 times, it's time to make sure we move it off this dime, which it's been on forever, and make sure we get to the next step. We need to get the urban planner on board. We need to make sure we're talking finance. We need to make sure we're talking getting a shovel into the ground at some point in time. So that's the piece of it. The only other piece I'd like to mention from the other discussion, if I may, is we went through the process very extensively in 2017 about how to do this. And after multiple meetings, multiple discussions, the general consensus seemed to land on this idea of trying to phase it in. Let's not tear it down as they did when they tore the city down from, all 8 blocks and then hope to build it. So the only other thing I'd like to put on the table is the discussion that we had is it really falls into 3 parcels. That first parcel, which is along Lafayette, goes up Homestead, that is city-owned, university-owned, state-owned, and there's been some question about the state office building. That seems like it's the most, the first phase that could be put together. Then you can argue, I guess, you guys are more experts than I am, what that phase 2 and phase 3 is with the post office area and then the Prometheus property on how that works. But the other piece that was discussed when it was somewhat agreed to go with this 3-phase system was to make sure it's designed as a unit and not let's come in and build phase 1 and not worry about 2 or 3 and hopefully come up with a plan for 2 and 3 later. To come up with an overall vision for the downtown, for the city of Santa Clara, and then truly look at phasing it in, whether that takes 5 years or 10 years, whatever it takes. But stay true to form on that original vision for the entire downtown area.
And then I just want to second that one thing that I think we mentioned in a past meeting is that our group has gone out and surveyed citizens. Now, it's unofficial, but it was professionally done, as far as the questions and so forth. And a lot of what we're talking about, is emblematic of what the citizens are asking for as well, as far as street grid, nod to the history, mixed use, trolley, the park, et cetera. So, and then doing this piece by piece, I think, you've got guys like, Matt Hardenstein and Johnny and Sean, and, we want to make sure that if they're affected, that, to Butch's point, we call it 7 and 8, which is closest to, so parcel 7 and parcel 8, closest to Lafayette and Homestead and Benton, that retail's in place there, and you have the potential to move retailers that are going to be affected in the next batch. So I'm in agreement, we're in agreement with that. Anna, you concur on that? Yeah.
Yes, as everyone's mentioned here so far, there seems to be a serious amount of alignment going on. It seems even at your Art and Wine, it's almost the same things are repetitive. So it's got to be a universal sign that we're on the right path. So I agree. I think we've got 2021 and 2022 in our line sight. I think we could really, if all goes well with the urban planner, I think we can definitely move ahead and hit those marks,
Is there anything that should be added? All right. Doesn't mean we can't add things later.
I mean, it's not a vision for what I think we need to build, but it's a vision for how we actually get to the final product, which is, I think, something that's really important and why I think there's been issues with why it hasn't, been completed yet in 60 years. And that is, I mean, how do we, I think there needs to be a vision and a process to getting investment from developers and, other entities, owners, to actually make those steps and put shovels in the ground, right? And there's going to have to be a community investment through probably, the city of, resources, money, utilities, studies that are already completed to try to really kind of incentivize this plan actually getting done. Otherwise, we're going to put this whole thing together, and it's going to sit on a shelf, and it's going to be a real pretty book to read, and we're all going to be left with nothing.
And sort of related to what Adam was saying, looking back on past projects too, I don't think, and even now, I don't see a lot of maybe marketing about this project to to the residents, you know? I mean, there's still people we bump into that go, there's a downtown coming, you know? So I think having I Love Santa Clara campaign start up and tie it in with the downtown would be fantastic, and just get that momentum built, and then and just getting the consensus going on it and the ideas flowing. I know Chris Shea had mentioned having like a hackathon of ideas where, you know, the students can get involved and participate in this development, because it's historic. I mean, we're bringing back a downtown. I mean, if we can bring back a parade, we can bring back a downtown. I mean, I think we're on a great trajectory right now, so more marketing for the downtown.
All right, thank you. Anybody else before I move on?
I think I last went to Adam, because I did watch Dave Sargent. I watched a couple YouTubes of him. And if the precise plan is done correctly, but again, with city, you know, the city has to be firmly behind this, infrastructure and so forth, and that's, you know, again, that's many meetings away. But if you create a precise plan that is financially feasible for them, do they come forward? And that's something that, you know, again, is a question for David to give us examples of how that was done. And it's usually the first guy who jumps in the water, right?
Yeah, I just think it's important to put that in the plan and our visioning of how fast, you know, we all have this timeline in our heads of, I think a lot of us would love to go out there with a shovel right now and have the meeting out there and start digging it up, but I think we really need to put a plan forth on how to get the vision to a reality within the process. So I don't want to leave that part out.
Okay. So next I have future meetings and next steps. So our next meeting is scheduled for October 30th. At that meeting, it is the goal to introduce our consultant. The consultant contract goes to council on October 8th. So assuming it gets signed, they'll be coming to our October 30th meeting, so there'll be more information about that. And then following that, the 4 meetings that we sort of had planned out when we went out with our request for qualifications for the consultant, for them to check, for us to hold meetings with you guys, for the city to hold meetings with you guys. So some of the key meetings were reviewing background information once the consultant has done sort of the existing conditions report, identifying opportunities and constraints. And then another meeting would be on the financial analysis of the plan scenarios, and determining guiding principles. Input, farther down the line, input on the plan framework, land use, circulation, urban design, and then reviewing, preventing input on the actual draft plan text. So just as a reminder.
So how long of a period is that expected to take? 4 months or?
So we don't have the schedule right now. We're going to be meeting with the consultant before the October 30th task force meeting to hammer out a schedule. They're not under contract with us right now, so we're not having meetings with them determining schedule and such.
Assuming the council approves.
Assuming the council approves, yes, of course, there is a caveat. All of this is assuming the council approves the contract. But yes, that'll be one of our first items on the to-do list is hammering out the schedule.
Okay, and to Adam's point, I agree that all these steps are necessary, but it doesn't end there, right? We need to go all the way through approval of the plan at the city council, so.
Yes, the schedule will include taking the plan to council.
I want to add on to it a little bit too, having been through a few of these planning efforts. I think this is a pretty unique group in a sense that we've really done a lot of vision work as we've just been kind of reflecting upon, and there's a lot of consensus already built up around that. And you've done a lot of research too, and I acknowledge that. And so we want to make sure that the consultant team really understands all that, and that they can really come in and try to capture everything that's already happened here and build on that, so that we're not, we don't want to spend time with them retreading things that have already been done, because we're all eager to move this along.
And to that point, I mean, the best way, so we've got too many PowerPoints, believe me. So I don't want to like dump a 50-page, doc on the guy's, table on here's Charleston and here's Fort Worth and so forth. But any kind of data that they need, and it's going to save money because we've, again, talked to city management all the way down to the retailers of, not every city, but several, so. And ones that have worked and ones that have not worked, so.
The only thing I'd say to Andrew's point is I agree, but at the same time, if we're doing something completely wrong, I'm hoping that we're paying them to tell us that we're doing it completely wrong.
Exactly,
I mean, they are the professionals. So it's like, at some point, I mean, if we're going down a path that they've seen over and over again fail, I'm expecting them to stand tall and proud and say, this is not what you want to do.
I'd like to
So-
kind of piggyback on. Yeah, so it's like I design houses, right? And so many of my clients say, well, I already got some sketches, I have some ideas. I said, hold on. This is the way I like to work best, not to get into my creative flow. I mean, so I can get into my creative flow is, let's go to your house, let's talk about it. You tell me what's the problem is and what your desires are, and then let me talk. So yeah, you don't want to, you hit it on the head. You want to let their creative flow, and not micro it, so.
I wanted to ask, so, and I think I know the answer. So within their group, there is a retail expert and a traffic expert?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So I think it was last meeting, we talked about the Urban Land Institute. I don't know, I've been thinking, and you guys can say, no, I don't know if it's worth bringing another cook into the kitchen. I mean, and rehashing, I know we kind of talked about how it'd be good, but we've hired this urban planner, WRT, and they're going to come in with all their consultants, and we have our whole group. I think it might be best to hang tight and kind of flush through that and see where we end up. And then if we, then see where we are and go, well, maybe it is worth spending the extra money, or maybe it's better we just have this great connection with WRT and we'd rather spend for some additional services for, I think they had some collaborative things for community outreach. What do they call those? I don't know. What did they say they were? I don't know what they were. No, they had a funny name for them. But anyway, doing something like that versus, getting another set of people where we'd have to rehash the whole thing, so.
Yeah. All right. So this is just quick next steps. Like I said, October 8th is the council meeting where the consultant contract will be heard. Once the consultant's on board, their first order of business is looking at the existing conditions and all the information that already exists around downtown. We'll be establishing a technical advisory committee, so that is sort of a partner to this public task force. It's the internal agencies that Public Works and Parks and Valley Transportation Authority possibly, that we will meet with, and then starting the community engagement. From
And
there
Leslie,
on.
I'm sorry, so on TAC, that's going to include who?
So I don't have the full list now, but it is internal agencies, so departments, so like our Public Works Department, our Parks Department, possibly VTA for transportation. School districts usually are on that. Who else do we have?
And that's going to be selection of those committee members, or when you say
Right,
establish?
so we'll put together that committee. Staff will put together that committee and we'll meet.
Yeah,
Yeah, usually,
got it.
yeah.
Okay.
Just to, make sure on the technical side of things that we're not doing something that the city could never support.
Right.
All
And
right.
that's a vote on the 8th to
The vote on the 8th
ratify?
is for the contract for the consultant,
Okay, got it.
yes. Actually awarding the consultant.
And it's on the public hearing portion of the agenda, assuming that some people will want to get up and talk.
Do we know what we ended up at, or are we allowed to say what we ended up at cost-wise and all that?
I believe it's not out, the agenda's not out yet, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have the number off the top of my head. I know that we were wanting to make sure that we had all the optional tasks lined up
Yeah.
so that if we have we don't have to go back and do more work to engage those if they add value.
All right, is there anything else that the task force wants to talk about before I move on to public comment?
It just seems like we are all in, as, as you said, Anna, in heavy agreement or heavy consensus, did you say?
Yeah. Yeah.
Leslie, I'd just like to take a minute to thank the staff for all your hard work and dedication. I know we've asked you to do some things above and beyond you anticipated doing. You guys have been phenomenal supplying us with information, with moving this forward. And I know, I probably speak for the rest of the committee too. We really appreciate all the work you've been doing. Thank you.
Very much. And that goes out to council too, you know, to Deanna's group and, yeah. Because we tend to bother them.
All right. Anything else? All right, so now we're going to open up the floor for public comment. I don't know, do we have a microphone? Just use that one, yeah.
Hi, Nancy Biagini, and I just want to first off say I'm super impressed with this whole group because I'm thinking of all these things I've wanted to say, and you hit them all. But there's a couple of things I kind of wanted to go back over because I think they're some of the more critical elements. And Butch, I had to laugh. Little Vatican. Be careful. I have a cousin who's a Jesuit. That said, I'm also, born and raised here. So I don't know how many of you were here back in the old days with the old downtown. Thank you. Are we, okay, with the old downtown and the like, but I do remember a time when I felt the university was more connected. Back in the days of donkey baseball and when the Giants came to play against Santa Clara. I mean, I didn't have anybody in my family at Santa Clara U at that time, but there was a connection, and that seems to have gotten lost, so I'm really happy that you're here to bring it back. And to kind of tag on to that, one of the things when there was, I know, Anna, you brought up the multicultural, I think a few of you did, and you too, Butch, and I just want to throw this out there. It's not just the German, the Portuguese, okay, some of us were Italian, and all the rest, but it's also the indigenous that were here when the mission started. I asked some folks once upon a time, hey, can you name a famous Indian, because that's what we called it when we were kids, right? A famous Indian in the U.S. And I'd hear things like Geronimo, Sitting Bull, and all that. Nobody could tell me an important Indian persona in the state of California. So, as a little bit of a sidebar, I would love nothing better than to have an indigenous little museum that served some of the indigenous foods at their snack bar, somehow incorporated into it. That said, I really like the idea of rooftops. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I call connectivity, which is very closely related to access. God, I didn't think you'd remember what I said, Adam, about how do you get to Valley Fair? We can tell everybody of our friends in Oakland how to do it. Now try to tell somebody in Oakland or the city how to get to historical Santa Clara, and it's like, okay, so it's that connectivity and that access, and they're related in this respect. Access to me becomes critical if we're going to be able to support the retail that we want to see downtown. But on the other hand, access, you think cars. I don't want to kill the old quad with their neighborhoods getting, they can't even park anywhere close to their home anymore, like San Francisco, right? I don't want to kill that. And I do believe that, I think it was you that said it on about millennials and seniors. They don't want to get in their car. I got a big enough family. That is so true. I don't know how much of I guess I'm a senior now. I don't want to get in my car if I don't have to. And I think that connectivity goes, you said something about it, Dan, that I thought was important. You've got what I call uptown. That's, probably millennial 20-something central. as the plans are shaping up. Then you've got historical downtown for, old folk like me or people that are interested in history. But you also got ECR, El Camino Real. For a short time, I was on that committee, and as that gets developed, to me, the connectivity, just my opinion here, y'all will figure it out, especially since a consultant has a traffic person as well as has those elements built into it. In my brain, I'm thinking trolley, shuttle, whatever you call it, right? That connects Commute Central, which right now looks to be the train station, BART coming in and the rest, connects that with that whole span that's getting built up and down Coleman. I'm sorry for anybody from San Jose who may be listening to this, but I don't want to see them all head over to Target and Trader Joe's and the rest. If we had some sort of shuttle system connected to I'm going to use the word convertible, okay, Lego or built that can be converted to condo, parking structure where folks that are commuting or even people that maybe live in little different areas of Santa Clara, and maybe they get a special yearly annual sticker that gives them a cut rate on the parking. We get a big parking garage by a transit central, okay? And that connects you via shuttle or trolley to the downtown, to the uptown, and also connects ECR, where we've got some high-rise residents going. You're going to then have that connectivity that flows through all the major areas, and it does it in a way that keeps all the cars from overcrowding the old quad. Because I don't want to see a historical neighborhood set some old quad residents' hair on fire, okay? It's that idea of we have to have the access because that's what's going to support the retail. I mean, I think the lessons about Los Gatos versus Campbell are points well taken. But that access doesn't mean everybody can drive their car, but it does mean you've got to be able to park your car and jump on, hop off shuttle or trolley that can connect you to the entertainment and the rest. It would also, down ECR, connect some residential, heavy, dense areas, and I'm not just talking about the new units going up, I'm talking about all the housing there, right? I mean, I know I've got neighbors, and I'm about 8 blocks off of ECR and El Camino and Los Padres. I got neighbors that would love nothing better than to walk down to El Camino and jump on a trolley that'll take them uptown or downtown. That to me is really critical because we can all talk about, and I've heard plenty of it, about how we want the old town back. It's got to be mixed use. I mean, it just has to be, or it's not going to survive. Hello, look at Los Gatos, look at some other downtowns. I mean, that to me is kind of critical. I'm really trying to cut to the chase on this and not kill you with time. I think some places where I've seen university towns, at risk of a different word, I mean, when I visited Asheville, North Carolina, wow. Not only did they have a historic area, they had a downtown area that blended quite well with the university. And then, of course, they had all the, I would call outdoor activities. That town moved without killing the current residents. We're in a different area, but I think there's elements of those places that if you dilute out the elements, you can figure out how to do it. And I would love nothing better than to see street art in whatever, I mean, I think that blends in to these public spaces, having, street art, maybe it's a rotating exhibit of street art, something like that. Those, if you have the right connectivity and access, that doesn't mean cars everywhere. I think you start creating that destination spot, that placemaking that we all want to see come back. So anyway, hope I made myself clear. I'll shut up now. Okay, thank you very much for all the work you're
Thank
doing.
you.
Hi, I'm Frank Lemon. My wife and I have been waiting for downtown for 28 years. We've been here that long. One of the first questions we asked when we got here is, where is it? I hope we can bring it back in 2022. I'm also a member of ROD, Reclaiming Our Downtown. On the core team, I've been working with the group for not quite 2 years yet, I believe. Very excited with all we've been able to do and where we are today, and the fact that I can talk to you is great. I recently went down for my high school reunion to Claremont, California, in Southern California, which is a college town. It has 4 universities there. I was shocked. I hadn't been there in decades, and when I left, downtown was a lazy single street going down the middle of the town. Now it's like 4 streets. It's thriving. They have public transit connections. They have parking. They have City Hall down there. They have the council chambers down there. It is the hub of the city. And I was really curious about how that works. So I just happened to bump into a lady who told me that I should go talk to one of the principals of the Retailers Association. She is a photographer in Claremont, and she has her shop right down in the downtown. I did not get the chance to talk to her, but I did get the chance to talk to her husband. He told me that the downtown was struggling for a long time, but the retailers came forward and really got engaged to make it succeed from a retail basis. One of the ways they did this was to start hosting various community engagement events. They actually do a paid wine and beer walk every year, $45 ticket, so they actually charge for these events. They also have free Friday night concerts about 3 or 4 times a year. And they do other types of events as well. So I think one of the first things we need to do is make sure that we put a stake in the ground for a retailers association. That needs to happen. And it just doesn't happen automatically. I think we should actually encourage it, make it form. And regarding parking can always be removed later, but it can't be added afterwards. So let's add it now. Put it in, and just like Adam said, if the opportunity presents itself to convert it over to other uses, it's easier to do that than it is to try and solve a parking problem which is untenable. I want to make a point. Where is the parking in Los Gatos? Bingo. Where is the parking in Campbell? They have their own garage. Where is the parking in Mountain View? They have their own garage. Those garages fill up, but without those garages, I'd be willing to bet those downtowns would not be as vibrant as they are. So we need to really think about parking. Very excited about the parking structure that the university put in recently. I'm not sure about the street. It's kind of off by the 7-Eleven there. But my wife uses that, and she pays for parking for the women's club. We don't mind paying $5 for her to park there. Don't make it free. Charge for it. People will pay. Even if it's a small sum, it helps. So let's look at that. And then another thing I think we need to consider are ride-sharing drops. When I was down in Claremont, I was using Uber and Lyft a lot. They could drop me off at the corner and sometimes on the street, but on Friday night when it gets busy there, it makes it a little tricky to get dropped off. So if there's little cutouts or something like that, if we make plans for ride-sharing areas where passengers can board and or disembark, I think that's not only a safety consideration, I think it actually helps with the traffic flow when it's busy. So if we could plan 1 or 2 of those, I think it'd be great. And let me see here. I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say. Oh, connectivity is key. Options. So we have an amazing opportunity with the major transit hub within walking distance of the downtown. I've taken the VTA number 10 bus from the airport and gotten off and walked into the downtown already. So I know it works. If we have a hotel in the downtown and you've got overnight people staying with just a roller bag, they can easily take the VTA 10, which is free, I might add. There's no charge to ride it, and get off there near Benton. If we add a stop, if VTA adds a stop at Benton, they can walk right in on Benton, right into the downtown. So adding options like that and making options available, I think are going to be crucial to success. We're going to see all kinds of traffic coming in. Not only there will be some vehicular, but also scooters. Probably people walking in. VTA is another option, and the trolley. I think a trolley is a great idea. And so I would encourage the task force to consider as much connectivity as possible. And I heard that voice, which gave me great encouragement. So I think much of what I've heard is spot on the right track. I commend you for seeing these things now, because later it'll be too late. So great job, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank. Can I?
Thank you.
Can I respond to one?
Yeah.
So just the comment on Los Gatos, because I did go down at lunch, and there was plenty of parking. There just wasn't lunch. Whereas now, if you call the Chamber of Commerce in Campbell, it's packed at lunch, and the guy's biggest beef was there's no parking. So even though they have the high rise. So I don't think that's the issue that's dissuading, at least at the lunch hour in Los Gatos.
Okay, I just had a quick question. I know that most small downtowns and some bigger downtowns, the gentleman mentioned, they're city halls. So I was just wondering, is there going to be a city hall at this new downtown? Or is
May
it
I ask your
talking
name?
about?
Just
Oh, my name's Jean.
Jean?
Yeah.
Well, it's something we can talk about. I mean, there's no plan at this point.
Oh, okay. That's all I needed to know.
And I know it's come up as a question, so we really have to look at, the cost that would be involved in doing that, and the process, and cost both in terms of construction and opportunity, if you chew up land with that, and is that really the best use? So I think there's, that'll be part of the discussion that happens here.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Patricia Long. I wear a lot of hats in the city, but I'm speaking for myself today. So I have 4 points, if I can read my own chicken scratch here. Sorry. So one of the things that Frank had mentioned about is to engage for the retailers and stuff. So I think, like, even before we actually start building things in there, we should probably have more activation events in the area, such as a parade, to kind of like get people to realize that there is a retail opportunity in this area. So this is actually really useful for both attracting an audience and also letting people who are potentially want to have a business downtown to say there is an opportunity there to actually invest. So that's one. Point two, I was thinking about instead of just having like developers come in and do things, we should actually open up some opportunity for community investment. So like the people can feel like they're actually putting their own, money on it, and therefore they want to see it succeed. So this could be like, public arts project or something. We can do maybe community spaces and stuff like that. Things that would tie into like our library and such that, so, you can have your name on there. It's like, have it, that hometown pride, to put that in there. As a part of the HLC, I'm always talking about, on the historic downtown, we want to make sure whatever goes in there aesthetically, it's complementary with the rest of the town. So like, I love that whole discussion we had over here today, and that was perfect. My last point is I actually recently joined the Citizen Advisory Committee for Caltrain. There is a 9-member committee that advises the Joint Power Board at Caltrain that sets, fares and routes and all that stuff. There's currently 2 Santa Clara County representatives. It's me and the mayor of Sunnyvale. One of the things that I was talking to Joe Navarro, who is the operating director for Caltrain, is that they won't change anything unless there's something concrete for them to go to. But we want to make sure we engage in public transit agencies early on in these conversations to make sure that we are providing these options for people to come and go. So that's all I have.
What was your name? Sorry.
I'm Patricia Long.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
It got me kind of excited. We talk about events and everything, like the parade and everything, and the ice cream social at the library. When I was in McCall, Idaho, I was like, where's the downtown? There really was, it was barely there, right? But me, the architect, there was a great sign and had the vision statement. It said, why revitalize? And I just started thinking, I'm not for signage, too much of the cart before the horse, but I think maybe that would be, because it's something you said that, we need to tell the city that we're starving for retail. We want people to understand that there's a potential there. And then what Frank said about, the retailers actually helped push. So maybe signage that talks about what's going on right now, strategically placed on the side, not just a cheesy little thing, but maybe something with some sense of permanence, vision statement, something could help. I don't know.
Also something that,
Even
kind of get
art-related.
people's
It could
imagination
also
going.
be art, it's just got to be very clear with a, again, a vision. They had a vision statement, and then they said, why revitalize? So, yeah, I'll send it out. I took a bunch from different towns
Cool.
over by here. So. Yeah, I'm sorry, I jumped in.
All right, I'm no stranger here, Anthony Becker. I'm going to be a resident tonight. To continue what Frank was saying, I've been waiting 34 years. Yeah, that's how old I am. I'm a millennial, and I've never got to see a downtown Santa Clara. My father, who left for Vietnam when he was, 19 years old, just like another member who was part of this, Sam Sue, he left, came back home, it's gone, and it's never come back. And the thing is that now my generation, we want to see it. We want to see it happen. And the steps that we need to have it happen are pretty much right in front of us right now. One thing I like to elaborate on is that millennials, yeah, we kind of don't want to use our car, but with the public transit system here in the Bay Area, especially after what happened with the grand jury and VTA, it's a mess. And for about 7 months, I took public transit. It was a disaster. I ended up just buying a brand new car because I didn't want to have to rely on my government or a public transit system to get to work, because you get in trouble if you're late to work, Thing I see is that we need to start putting more connectivity in for transportation. One, I see that we have, the BART going on over there. We have, the Santa Clara train station, and then we're going to have that whole development over there, the crossings. That's going to be a traffic nightmare. I'm already out there. I see it. Daily you have people turning left into Costco. It's a long line, single line. You need to have new options. And that option is, and I've said it many, many times, Benton and Brokaw need to go through. Period. It needs to happen. People, for example, I was trying to get a Uber to the train station from San Jose to Santa Clara train station because it was cheaper to go to Santa Clara because of the zones. And I said, okay, I need to get to Santa Clara. The person did not know how to get to Santa Clara train station. Wow. They go, oh, I go in this way. And I go, no, I could just walk underneath. Oh, no, here, let me make a U-turn. Nobody knows that it's a dead end. And we need to put it through. And everyone says if you put a tunnel or something, it causes crime. Well, guess what? You got a police station right there. I hear excuses, but we have solutions. And the solutions are put a trolley through, connect it to the airport. We can become a new San Francisco SFO. I'm not saying let's turn the old quad into San Francisco. We can do it. And downtown Franklin Street needs to go through. It needs to be not only pedestrian, but car. That's where the parade's going to go through. We need to have our parade champions go through Franklin Street in downtown. And thinking about when we talk about parking, Campbell succeeds because of its parking. Mountain View succeeding because it's parking. I have a solution. That big building over there on the corner of Lafayette, turn that into a giant parking structure, the same height, same dimensions, and then years when we start losing parking, we can convert that into shops or something, and you can build a university village around that parking garage. Because I've seen them doing it in downtown San Jose. This parking garage, I'm walking down the street and I go, wait a second, this is where cars used to park. And now they have little shops inside that parking garage because they're seeing the reduction in parking. So, and lastly, City Hall needs to be downtown. That's the heart. Every city I go to, a City Hall is downtown. This place, yeah, I love it, but it's outdated. Our technology's outdated. We need an upgrade. And I think this is the best possibility for our downtown because, to be honest, I am now starting to date again. I'm seeing someone, and when we decide to go out to eat, where do we go? Where do you end up thinking we would go? We go to Campbell, we go to San Jose, we go to Mountain View. Santa Clara it's dying. And I think if we put it downtown, we're going to revitalize it and we're going to have a renaissance again. So keep up the good work and don't let it down. And millennials, we want it. I've never seen it downtown, so let's keep going. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Patty Allman with Reclaiming Our Downtown and the Parade of Champions. And I just want to thank all of you, first of all, just for all the hard work that you're doing. I really appreciate it. It's exciting. It's like the beginning of our downtown. And so I appreciate you helping our dream come true. I'm also a resident of Santa Clara for 24 years and look forward to the downtown. I won't say all the reasons why because I've talked about this before. I just want to keep it simple as far as one thing I think we can do, like Anna was mentioning, just seeing more marketing right now about the downtown, about the parade. I'd like to see more signs and the city putting more marketing out that talks about, hey, you want to see the great downtown, come take a tour, or, oh, we have this big event coming on right now about the downtown. I just don't see enough information, except, recently, whether it's a festival or for the Parade of Champions, there's been tons of information out. But I'd like to see us getting more interest in the community so that will direct people to the downtown. And also, like Butch was mentioning, just being able to, have the Santa Clara University and the downtown really be one. One thing that we talked about in reclaiming is, seeing some kind of a bridge, that goes from the university, a walkable bridge. And I think that would just connect, it'd be a great way to connect Santa Clara University with the downtown and feeling like, hey, you come from here and then you go over there and you check out the museums and the cultural buildings that you have. And I look forward to that as well. I think that's it for right now. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Evans. I'm the vice president of the OQRA. People touched on a lot of good points. The top 5, I think, from both the group here and from the city, the reach out at the Art and Wine, I think are all probably kind of my top points as well. I think it's really important we have a public space where we hold events. I know some cities with successful downtowns like Campbell and Redwood City have been holding like music in the park type things, but in their downtowns so that people go out, have dinner, and then they go listen to the music, and it becomes like an event and helps drive business to the area. And I think it's important that we do that. And I think some of it's, planning those events, but also making sure the city makes it tractable for people to do events like that, because a lot of times the permitting process and stuff can be really hard to hold those events. I think another big thing is connectivity that everybody brought, like getting the train station involved. I do want to point out, like Frank talked about taking the number 10. That may be limited because San Jose right now is working on a plan to put an airport connector in that will bypass Santa Clara and do a direct connection between Diridon and the airport. They're looking at bids for a VTA. If they put that in, we might lose the 10 bus. And cut off our station from connectivity, and that's losing the connectivity I think we need. So at Santa Clara, I hope that maybe it's not just like part of the downtown plan, but we do something to make sure we don't lose that. And I think we have to be very proactive as a city and as an area to make sure that we have a plan so that VTA will, won't route past us. And I have one other thing. I think I forgot my last point. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Or do you want to say something first?
Yeah, just to follow up on that. I mean, if they did that, and I know this is beyond our scope right now, but you get the closest train station to SJC. I mean, that would be insanely bad for them to put a tram or whatever from Dearden to just, San Jose Airport when we're hundreds of yards away from it. So I think that's something we got to consider.
Just to note, they're doing it because of the high-speed rail. That's their main,
Yeah.
one of their main focuses. Yeah.
All right. Any other public comment? No? Yes?
I'm sorry.
With San Jose, we should work with San Jose and collaborate more instead of compete against each other and sue each other. Let's build, mountains instead of creating holes. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. With that, that's all we have for the
One-
evening.
One more thing. So what came up a couple times was the city's marketing.
Yes.
Is that, is there an update on that as far as press releases, a little more proactivity, I think, with the media on what's going on with downtown? Because I know our group would like to see that.
Duly noted that this is the first time tonight that I've heard so many people actually mention marketing. So we'll have to go back and look in on that for sure. Yeah, I mean we do have a communications person here with the city. So
And that might be something that has to go to the Economic Development Marketing Communication Committee.
all right. Well, with that, thank you all for attending. Our next meeting will be October 30th, same place.
Thank you. And congratulations to the Parade of Champions people.
Yeah.
For an
Yes,
amazing
congratulations.
job. Way to go.